Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, joined as always by Joe Resinello. And once more, dear friends, we're going into the breach tonight. Joe and I wanted to take a minute before we get into what we always call the spaghetti and meatballs of our show and talk about the relevant topics and things that went on this week. But for over the last couple of days, there's a couple things that are going on where Joe and I felt the need that we really want to clarify for you, our audience, and all those that are listening to us, what's going on out there. Because Joe always makes the point correctly, that we do not look left or right. We look up. And if something is a lie, I don't care if it comes out of the mouth of Bernie Sanders, and I don't care if it comes out of the mouth of some people who maybe in the past I admired as conservatives. If it's wrong, if it's a lie, then it needs to be exposed and it needs to be shut down. That we have to be distrustful, at least initially, okay? We need to be distrustful of those who call themselves conservative. And we're going to get into what that means. That's why we wanted to start tonight by talking about that topic in general, because now you correct me if I'm wrong, okay? The conservatism that we look for, okay? If I wanted to consider myself a part of the conservative movement, and this neo-conservative movement, I don't consider myself a part of, and I know that Joe doesn't consider himself a part of, because the conservative movement, number one, has to be pro-life. Number one. And not pro-life in some political way, looking for some sort of an accommodation.
With a caveat.
Right.
No caveats.
No caveats, no exceptions. Okay, we interviewed Father Stephen Imperato. We were on the Crusade channel the other day, and we thank Mike Church and Rick Barrett at the Crusade channel. We were on the Barrett Brief, and we're going to make that radio show available on our page, and we already have, so you could go and listen to it if you like. We are abortion abolitionists. So number one, you would agree. The conservative movement has to be unapologetically and clearly pro-life. Okay. Number two, the conservative movement that we consider ourselves a part of, okay, has to be pro-family. And very clearly and boldly, that means acknowledging that the family, the marriage, is a union of one man and one woman, to the exclusion of all other arrangements. Whatever you think those arrangements are, if you are compromising on that at all, we're not in your movement, and we're not voting for you.
You see,
okay?
We are Catholic first. This is an important thing. This is not a conservative show. We are Catholic men who have conservative ideas. We are Catholic first. Why are we against those two things? Because they are intrinsic evils defined by the Catholic Church. And I am a Catholic man, and my goal of life is to get to heaven, not to get rich, not to be a conservative, not to do anything else, but to live my life as Jesus Christ asked me to do so in the one church that he founded under St. Peter. And that is the goal.
Right.
And that is what we communicate.
Right.
And that permeates in different aspects of our conversations, to the culture, to politics, to economics.
That's right. And speaking of economics, let's get on that too. So pro-life, pro-family. The other one is we do not bend our knee. Joe and I consider ourselves, rightfully so, to be free marketeers. I believe the free market is the best way to raise people out of poverty. But the difference between Joe and I and our brand of conservatism, and let's say some of the things we're hearing now that from people that are supposedly on the right, is that they're willing to bend a knee to the free market. And we are not bending our knee to the free market. The free market is an idol that needs to be torn down also, if in fact you are going to make it into an idol. And let's be clear, Joe, it has become that. You cannot intrude into the free market under any circumstances. Well, I say you can, at times, sparingly. We don't want to encourage government to do that, okay? But by the same token, markets don't operate separately than everything else in the world. If God's law governs everything in the world, then God's law and the moral law govern markets also. And those not acting in accord with the moral law within those markets need to. So this is a very, very big distinction to be made, okay? So it goes to markets. because I watched, and just so you know, okay, I watched a video that's online. Okay, now we say that we're at the front line of the culture war. This was Turning Point USA. Okay, and Charlie Kirk, who up till now, I mean, I liked him a lot. I'm liking him a little bit less. Okay, and Rob Smith. Rob Smith is a veteran. Okay, thank you for serving our country, Rob. Okay, Rob is African American. Okay, which doesn't matter to us, but he's gay. Okay, and yes, that does matter. It matters because what Turning Point is doing, okay, is, and this goes to Fox News also. Let's be clear about that, okay? We're getting tired of people who call themselves conservative, passing themselves off as conservative. In the meantime, what they really are is libertarian. And Tucker Carlson made this point, all right, in a speech he gave recently, okay? The libertarian, if you're conservative in America, the libertarian is not your friend. If you're conservative Catholic, the libertarian is absolutely not your friend. And I'm going to tell you why. You see David Koch recently passed away? Yes. The Koch brothers? All right? Do people realize, I don't know why the left hates him so much. The guy was for open borders because he wants all the cheap labor. Okay? That's just the way it goes. Anybody who's espousing open borders, let's say on the right, they want the cheap labor. He was all for abortion. He was all for gay marriage. How is David Koch our friend as conservative Catholics when he wants to promote these things in the culture or allow? Because the libertarians are now allowed to convince you that they are really conservative, and they're not.
And let me just clarify a statement he made. Just because that gentleman is gay, we do not hate gay people. We actually love them enough to tell them that that choice, and it is a choice to live that lifestyle, is a sin. Just as it is a choice to have sex outside of marriage, which is a sin. Just as it is a choice to contracept, which is a sin. And we will speak out against all of those things.
I should have been more clear.
No, but I just want people to know we are not anti anyone. We love you enough to tell you the truth. And if you hate us as a result of it, that's your business. But I will tell you the truth. Always. Now, not a lot of people will do that.
No.
And not a lot of shows will do that. And what I think Joe is illustrating is people pander. They pander because at the end of it, it's money.
Well, undoubtedly.
And this is what makes this show different because we don't have sponsors.
Right.
And we are just telling you the truth. And here's the thing. If you question one of our beliefs, like contraception, we'll explain why.
That's right.
We'll explain why the lifestyle of a man or a woman that is basically choosing to live a gay lifestyle is a sin. Because again, we are Catholic first.
Mm-hmm.
We are Catholic first. The goal of my life as a married Catholic man is to get my family to heaven. That is my number one priority. Why? Because it's what's best for them. It's what's best for me.
Mm. And
everything else does not matter. It comes way second. So way down the, I'm not speaking correctly, but it's right. Further down the line.
Right.
So that is the truth, and that's what you get from the show. And that we say this because we want to clarify exactly our position.
Be clear about this. Now, Eddie's chiming in. Hi, Eddie. How you doing? Eddie's a libertarian. Considers himself a libertarian, and he's pro-life. I don't doubt that for a second, Eddie. Believe me when I tell you, there are a lot of libertarians. Rand Paul speaks, has spoken at the March for Life, okay? I have no real problems with Rand Paul. Here's what I have a problem with. You call yourself libertarian, Eddie, and that's fine. I have a problem with people who are libertarian and who seem to have a little bit of an agenda, who want to appeal to conservatives, but then they take positions that are diametrically opposed to conservatism. Now, let me give you a case in point, and this is where we're going with this, Eddie, because there's a lot of confusion out there. And here, at this front line, we don't want there to be any confusion, none whatsoever, okay? Fox News is very quickly becoming the party or the libertarian news channel, okay? And what I mean by that is more and more you have people that go on there, like Catherine Timpf, like Tommy Lahren, who had a falling out with Glenn Beck because she never disclosed to him that she was actually pro You have people like Tammy Bruce, pro-gay marriage, okay? You have people like Guy Benson, again, pro-life, okay? Guy Benson is a married gay man, okay? My problem with it is because of these things, nobody in the conservative movement is going to start speaking out about these things anymore. They're all going to become little John Kasich's who say, well, the court has ruled on gay marriage, so we all have to just move on. Sean Hannity has moved on. Many other people have moved on. If you want to plant the seeds of destruction for this country, it has nothing to do with Obamacare or universal health care or the border wall, okay, or anything else. The seeds of destruction in this country have been sown for 50 years because of the sexual liberation movement and have manifested and are manifested in abortion, gay marriage, and now gender ideology. There's the destruction of your country. If you're a conservative and you want to conserve this country, okay, and some of its founding principles, you need to be against those things. That's our point. Those things are important. Why? Because Charlie Kirk gets up there and he says that we are pro-LGBT rights. Okay, what does that mean exactly?
Well, so am
I. I don't want you to walk down the
So am
street
I.
and get the crap beat out of you because
Never.
you're gay. I don't want laws that say you can't hold a job because you're gay. I don't want any of that. But when you try to redefine marriage, then we will oppose you.
And why? Because there is no substitution between a man and a woman coming together as one in marriage. Marriage is under attack as it is by the culture. By saying that two men are equal, as the flag goes, to a man and a woman, you're trivializing something that cannot be trivialized. That's number one. Number two, it's biologically impossible because the goal of marriage is to have children. Sometimes people cannot have children, but that's not their fault. You're still open, to life. And that's part of being Catholic. You make that vow. And here's another thing. If you are Catholic and you had a Catholic ceremony and you are not open to life, your marriage is not sacramentally bound because you make a vow. Faithful, fruitful, free of consent. That is what you make a vow to on the altar before God.
So you can't substitute it. And that's our point. So the thing is, that's why we started out this, because I don't understand. I'm having a hard time understanding what pro-LGBT rights are. I have a problem understanding what all these rights are. You have the right, just like I do, okay, not to be harmed, not to be harassed, not to be discriminated against, not to be bullied, to be able to be employed, to have all the opportunities that I have. But you can't redefine the basic cell of society, which is the family. You cannot do that. Nobody can do that. You have a relationship if you're gay, okay, with somebody of the same sex, but it is not a marriage. And nobody's got the right to call that a marriage. A man who marries 5 women has no right to call that a marriage. A woman who marries 5 men has no right to call that a marriage, because a marriage is one thing. But I don't want to get too into the weeds. And my point was the position that, let's say, Turning Point USA was taken. They were met with hostility, okay, in the Q&A. I'm not saying I don't know these guys that were arguing with them. There are a couple of social media, big following of social media. So I'm not defending them. But Charlie Kirk looked like he was not planning to get pushback from what he thought was a very friendly audience. If I was there, I would have said, why is it a Western value to value gay marriage? In other words, because Joe, you have to understand, we've talked about this before. It's all part of the same agenda. I don't care if it's coming from your rabid Marxists, and I don't care if it's coming from your Ayn Rand libertarians. If it's contrary to the natural law, if it's contrary to the moral law, we as conservatives need to fight against it.
Why? Because no one wants to go against the grain and make waves and make enemies. If you tell people you are against same-sex marriage, you will do just that. You see, as a Christian, what's the first commandment? I put God above all things. If you don't like me because I speak the truth in accordance to God's law and the natural law, then I'm sorry. I can't help that. You see, it's about speaking the truth in season and out of season.
Right.
Sadly, people in the Catholic Church don't even do that, even at the highest levels, because they're afraid to make waves. Jesus Christ made waves.
Got nailed to a cross for it.
And I'm going to tell you this, that is the path to heaven, is to say the truth, no matter who likes it, no matter who doesn't like it. And why people are going along with this, because I'm going to tell you right now, Joe, this gay marriage thing, they're going to have their time right now.
Right.
They're going to bulldoze the Catholic Church for a while.
Unfortunately.
But there's a saying, man has his hour, but God has his day. You'll have your day. You'll have your hour, but this isn't going to last. Rome had its hour. For 270 years, every single pope was murdered. Guess what takes place every single year in the Colosseum? That for every single day for 270 years, they killed Christians. They do the Stations of the Cross. Rome is gone. Gone.
And the church is still
And
here.
the church celebrates the faith in the same place that they killed the Christians.
And we just had All Saints Day.
We will endure you. We will take a bloody nose, whatever it takes. But we will endure you. You will be an hour, and God will have his day.
That's right.
So this show is about that. We don't care. I'm going to be honest with you. The minute I betray that, take this show, throw it in the sewer.
That's right.
I don't care.
And you know who made that point? I'm sorry to cut you off. You know who made that point? Another very well-known social media celeb, Paul Joseph Watson. And he wasn't really questioning anybody's motives. He's a little bombastic. He's a little British guy. He's a little bombastic, makes these funny videos. Very, very smart guy, okay? And he was questioning all this stuff at Turning Point, basically saying, well, how isn't Charlie Kirk prepared to receive some of this backlash? You know, where he wasn't beating up on Charlie Kirk, but the idea that it's always, well, we're conservative, we're conservative, we're conservative, we're conservative, we're conservative. Well, you're not, actually. That's our point in this segment and why we want to make it clear and wanted to make it clear to all of our audience members. To put a finer point on it, then we're going to get into the spaghetti and meatballs of the show, and it's going to be a fun one, even though it's kind of started on a down note. But we have to be clear about what it is we're conserving, okay? We want free markets, but we don't want unfettered consumerism, okay? In other words, people are not just to be used to make rich people money, okay? We all want to participate in the market. We all want to make our lives better. We are pro-life, meaning we are against abortion at all places, at all times, under any circumstances, because it is an intrinsic evil, okay? We are against gay marriage and any other arrangement for marriage, okay? Because it violates God's plan for the family, which is husband and wife. And there's a number of other things that we don't have to get into right now. But our primary concern is to let everybody know that A, question those people on the right who call themselves conservative. And although both of us at times get a little bit of news and watch a couple of the personalities on Fox News, be careful of Fox News and what it is they're promoting also. Be careful of them. That's all we wanted to say about that.
We'll get into the show.
We're at the front line with Joe and Joe. Sunday nights, 8 o'clock. We are deep, deep, deep into the breach, and we haven't even started yet. And we want to thank Mike Church over at the Crusade Channel and Rick Barrett with the Barrett Brief on the Crusade Channel. They graciously allowed Joe and I to host the Barrett Brief. This past Friday, we did a 3-hour radio show. It was a blast. You could go. We'll provide the link, and it is also up on our page right now at the front line with Joe and Joe. Great channel. Mike Church is doing great things. Rick Barrett has a great talk show. He's on every day. Mike Church, the king dude. That guy's fighting the good fight. He's talking our language, and he's putting it out there to the culture, and he's resisting. We also want to thank Jonathan Ross, who's joining us right now from up in Toronto, Canada. Jonathan produces our show, makes it look real good, makes sure it gets out to as many people as we can. And we'd like to thank all of you wonderful people who join us every Sunday night here in the breach. And we got PM joining us. Kevin's with us. Sue, Eddie's with us. My baby's with us. Vinny from Hoboken's with us. So let's jump right in.
We're going to start off in South Carolina. Joe Biden last Sunday was denied Holy Communion by a priest. let's get the names right because names are important. The priest's name is Father Morey, Robert Morey, and the church is St. Anthony's in Florence, South Carolina. There's a lot of mixed messages going on, and I want to be very clear on why Father Morey denied him Holy Communion, okay? This is very important. The deposit of faith says so. You see, the Catholic Church is no one's individual church, not even the Pope. The Pope's job is to relay the deposit of faith. It's all there. It's given to him. He's given the keys, but he is to communicate the deposit of faith. Now, there have been some different messages. Father Dolan said that Robert Morey was wrong in doing so.
We'll be clear. Cardinal Dolan.
I disagree with you, Cardinal, and I would disagree with you to your face, and I'm going to tell you why, because I'm going to read you the canon, and you judge for yourself. It's Canon 915. This is what the canon says. The canon reads, those upon whom the penalty of excommunication or interdict has been imposed or declared, and this is the part that applies to Joe Biden, and others who obstinately persist in manifest grave sin are not to be admitted to Holy Communion. Now, what does that mean? Joe Biden has obstinately persisted for decades.
Publicly.
For decades. Publicly.
Right.
The priest has every right to say, sir, and this is the thing, it's not to punish him. It's for him to realize you are in a bad situation with God. Who cares if you win the presidency? Who cares? The goal of life is to get to heaven.
Right. The priest did him a favor.
And what he's saying is, sir, clean up your house because you have to face God. Now, I'm going to give you a couple examples in the church's history where that has taken place. Padre Pio, some people would go to confession with him. He wouldn't give them absolution. He would say, I can't absolve. Why? Because you have to repent seriously and have every intention to not do it again. He would say, you're not in that place, so I can't give you absolution. Why? So you come back.
Right.
And they did. Another example, in Louisiana, I heard this from Professor Robert George from Princeton. So I take his word. He's a very intelligent man, and he's a good Catholic. He said that the governor of Louisiana the Archbishop of New Orleans excommunicated the governor of Louisiana because the law said they had to, what's it called? Blacks and whites had to come together in schools. What do you call that?
Segregation.
Segregation. And the governor said, absolutely not. And he was Catholic. So know what the Archbishop did? He said, you're excommunicated.
Right. The governor was against integration. Right.
He was against it. And he said, oh, no, you will integrate these schools. He said, no, I won't. He said, you're excommunicated. And guess what the governor did at his deathbed? He repented. He repented. You see, that's the goal. You're doing them a favor. And that's what this priest is saying to Joe Biden indirectly. He's saying, my son, you're on the wrong side of things. Come to the right side of things.
Can I?
Absolutely.
I want to just jump in just to say one thing. This is not, this is me talking as a Catholic, but not, let's say, in a more merciful way that Father Morey is. I'm sorry. Joe Biden, no matter what his intentions, when he goes up to receive the Eucharist, or Andrew Cuomo, or Nancy Pelosi, or any one of them, or Kristen Gillibrand, or any one of them to go up to receive the Eucharist, I feel mocked. I know they're mocking Christ. I know, okay? But he's God. I'm not. I feel like they're slapping us all in the face. And it's about time that somebody defended the faithful. And I felt defended by Father Morey, okay? I felt like somebody finally stood up and said, Mr. Biden, let's be clear. You're not personally opposed to abortion. I'm not saying Father Morey said this, but this is the way I feel. You're not personally opposed to abortion. Because if you were, you wouldn't aggressively promote it, seek to have it funded, seek to put judges in place that are going to keep it legal. You're not personally opposed to abortion. You are a grave manifest public sinner. And yes, I do want to welcome you back to Holy Communion. You need to repent. Bishop Paprocki in Illinois did the same thing. Only the difference is Bishop Paprocki did it in a statement and asked asked that Dick Durbin not present himself. Father Morey found himself in a very compromising position. Father Morey woke up that day maybe not knowing that former Vice President Biden was going to be there at Mass, and Father Morey made a decision putting on the mind of Christ.
And he
not,
will suffer for
not
it.
the politician.
And here's the thing, you have to be willing to suffer for your faith. That's one of the Beatitudes. Blessed is he who suffers for my name. For yours is the kingdom of heaven.
That's right.
You see, that's the road to heaven. It's a narrow one. And you have to be willing to do this. This goes for all of us. You see, this man is doing his job, and he will suffer for it. That's as right. Jesus Christ suffered for his own, like, to say the truth. This is what the truth is. And
he's going to suffer for it at the hands of some of those people in the hierarchy
of the church. But you know,
and that's the unfortunate.
So be it.
Well, listen, the hierarchy of the church over the centuries has sent saints into the desert.
Look what they did to Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc. You want to read a good book? Read Mark Twain's novel on Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc was illiterate. She did not know how to read and write. Yet, when she was put in front of a tribunal, in front of bishops, they could not find one word of heresy. These were brilliant men. Because she was on the side of God. And she was burned at the stake. She was burned at the stake.
Do you know, I want to mention something about what you're saying right now. You see what Joe just said about being on the side of God, and we started out this conversation identifying what Joe and I mean by conservative. I made a mistake. I made one mistake, okay, and Joe just reminded me of it. First and foremost, the conservative acknowledges that the kingship of Jesus Christ. I don't care how unpopular that is. I remember the first time I heard that, I kind of was like, because I drank the Kool-Aid at one point, maybe not completely, but that whole idea, the lie of separation of church and state, which has seeped into all of our consciousness, there's no convergence of church and state if you recognize the social kingship of Jesus Christ. That's what we have to put first. And you just drove that home for me, because that's what I forgot to mention, because I just was guilty of the thing that I was accusing Charlie Kirk and the rest of them of, which is I forgot God for a moment. And first and foremost, if you're a conservative American, okay, God comes first. God. Everybody acknowledges it, by the way, at least gives lip service to it. I've heard my whole life. It's God, family, country. Country comes third. Family comes second. God comes first. Protestants say that. Many people say that, okay? It's not just Catholics. God, family, country, okay? And I forgot to do that. And I do want to tie that in. You were talking about how Joan of Arc was illiterate, all right? But she spoke the truth. That's the problem. That's one of the problems that we're suffering with in this country. And I just want to refer back for a second to the first segment. I guess ultimately what I really was trying to point out is that there are many, many more, I think, on the left, and a certain group now on the right. They both have different gods. They both have they've set up their false gods. Okay. The left, of course, does it with abortion, now with gender ideology. The state is their church. Okay. They've set up their false god and their false structures. The right does it too. And as I mentioned earlier, that's really what my main criticism was, and why I wanted to bring it up to you and our audience, is that they have their idols. They have their golden calves, which are usually you'll hear them constantly talk about the free market, okay? But usually in a way where you can't touch the free market. It's become a false god. Economic growth and corporate profits, those are all false gods. We talked about this like a couple months ago. Some of these conservatives would have you believe that if you're watching CNBC or Fox Business Network, that if Apple comes out with through the record earnings, and Amazon comes out with through the record earnings, through the roof, right? And everybody's breaking earnings and the stock market's going higher. We're all supposed to feel happy about that, even if I can't pay my own damn bills. That's a problem for conservatives. That's one of the reasons why Donald Trump's tapped into something, because a lot of these, you have establishment Republicans and you have establishment conservatives, okay? Neither one is necessarily, I'm not saying that they're not necessarily our friend, okay? Because when it comes to workers' rights, as soon as you mention workers' rights, what's the first thing out of the mouth? Oh, what are you, a socialist? No, we're Catholic. Last time I checked, Catholic Church condemns socialism and communism. So no, we can't be socialist or communist, okay? But anybody who talks about workers' rights, God forbid you talk about tariffs, the right, for the libertarian right. No tariffs. Can't have tariffs. Got to have global trade. Doesn't matter. Do business with dictators. Xi Jinping just said about Hong Kong, he will ground those people into dust. But we have to trade with them. The NBA says we have to trade with them. The NBA says, don't say that about them. You're going to cost us money.
And don't think the commissioner didn't say that, because he guaranteed he did.
What did LeBron James say? I know you have the right to free speech, but you don't know about the consequences. LeBron, if the consequences of that expression of free speech by your general manager, okay, or the general manager of the Houston Rockets cost you $10 million, sorry, brother, I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care how much money you lose.
When you die, God does not care. You see, this is another thing. When you die, God is not going to look on your resume. He's not going to say, oh, you were the vice president of the United States. Ooh, you went to Yale.
Yeah.
Ooh, you lived in Short Hills. Ooh, you drove this car. Doesn't care. Doesn't care.
That's right.
You see, this is, and you know something? We're here for a moment. I am going to be 50 years old. I could remember the day I graduated high school. In 30 years, if I'm so lucky, I'll be 80. And I'll be gone. I'll be gone.
Joe, not yet.
I'm just saying, the goal of life is to get to heaven. And if you love your children, and if you love your wife, that is the goal. Everything else is a second.
Well, you're right.
No, I just want to.
I think you're right for hammering that point home.
This is at the root of it. People are not willing to sacrifice. They're afraid to be hated. They're afraid that their pocketbook is going to be affected. They're afraid to drive a crappy car. They're afraid. They're afraid. They're afraid. No.
Right.
Everything is a second. And we pray to God to give us the grace to do that, because that's the path to heaven.
But you had a situation in this country, okay, and not long ago either. Before, look, this stuff, a lot of this stuff is come upon us really like a tsunami in the last 10 years. While we're at the front line with Joe and Joe, Sunday nights, 8 o'clock live on Facebook. Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. Quick shout out, Joe Romano just joined us. Kevin, you're right. No separation of church and state. It's a lie. We'll tackle that on another show, because that's a hot button one. Because then that people think that implies that we want a theocracy, and we do not want a theocracy, okay? But that's an important topic to have. So we're going to get back to that one, Kevin, but thank you for joining us. As I said, PM, and I know somebody else is on here. I want to give a quick shout out. Tom Connolly, all right, says, great job on the Crusade channel. Thank you, Tom, and thank you for listening. I want to get into this a little bit. Let's read this, Joe.
I just want to say,
go ahead.
Yeah, Joe Biden basically said, of course, the politician that's in him, he can't help himself. I'm a practicing Catholic. No, you're not. You see, no, you're not. And it's not me that says it. You see, Catholicism, there is no conservative, like the press makes you think that there's a conservative Catholic, a traditional Catholic, a liberal Catholic. You're Catholic.
You're Catholic, that's it.
Or you're not.
Right.
You believe everything or you don't. You see, when you receive the Eucharist, you say the creed. You say in church, I believe in the Holy Catholic Church. I believe in the communion of saints. I believe. You're affirming your belief before you receive Jesus. This isn't a symbol. It's Jesus Christ. You see, he's not a practicing Catholic, and he doesn't know his faith. This is a fact. This is not even disputable. The bishops have been very clear. Abortion is an intrinsic evil. It's intrinsically evil, which means under every circumstance, it's wrong, because it's murder. It's murder. And if you don't think it's murder, look at a sonogram. Many of you people have had children. Look at a sonogram. Do you know that there have been films of abortion? You could look at this on YouTube, that a child in the womb shrieks away from the instruments.
Right.
I could cry.
Why do you think,
as I say this?
Why do you think
I
Planned
could
Parenthood,
weep.
Why do you think Planned Parenthood doesn't? There was one law that they were trying to propose to say, okay, woman's got a right to an abortion. You must provide her a sonogram that she could look at before the abortion.
And they don't want it.
They don't want it because guess what? You don't need a PhD. The woman doesn't need a PhD or have gone to medical school to look at that sonogram and see that that's her child. And you know what will happen? Again,
you'll change your mind.
You change your mind. And Tom just chimed in probably about one of the other things, but all about the dollar signs, right? Exactly, Tom. Planned Parenthood doesn't want to lose the business.
So why does the church say you shouldn't have sex before marriage? Because it is a mother to you and is telling you this is what's good for you. Whether you want to accept that or not is your business, but you will feel the consequences of it if you don't. Now, Joe Biden, once again, he chooses not to hear it.
Right.
Why? Because he chooses his position. He wants to be the president of the United States. You see, this is where push comes to shove. In life, we all choose something. We choose something. Joe Biden has made his choice.
That's right.
And if you choose God, I'm going to tell you right now, you'll suffer. Life will be harder. But you have a belief. You follow the road, which is to heaven. Joe Biden has chose something else.
Right.
And this priest has said to him, sir, I love you. Please change.
Right.
I love you. And that's what I'm doing. Anything I say on the show, I could defend it. And I'll tell you the truth. Whether you want to accept it or not, it's your business. But that's what this priest has done.
That's right.
And he is not a practicing Catholic. I'm going to take it another step further. You cannot vote for abortion, especially the radical abortion that this party has proposed to this country.
That's right.
And call yourself a Christian.
What did Father Imperato say? What did Father Imperato say? Father Imperato, we did our interview. The interview with Father Imperato's up there. He says you could take everything else. He was mentioning specifically, he was talking about Donald Trump. Okay, he's not stumping for Donald Trump, but he believes Donald Trump on this issue is spot on and is completely in line with the proper position that he should be taking, because Donald Trump, Father Imperato says, keeps saying person in the womb, personhood, the recognition of personhood. He's using that language, okay? But Father Imperato made a good point, and that's why what Joe just said reminded me of that. Take everything you don't like about Donald Trump or take everything you do like about Donald Trump. If you're pro-life and you're with us on this, if you're with the Catholic Church on this, if you're with the view that is sane in this world on this, that all life deserves protection from the moment of conception to the moment of natural death, then you will vote for Donald Trump again. Because we'll get into it in a minute, he is the only one who is speaking in the language that the pro-life movement actually recognizes. Okay, the left certainly is the party of death. What did Father Imperato call them? He said that you have the party of commission, which is the Democrats, and then you have the party of omission, who give a lot of lip service to the pro-life movement, but really don't do anything about it. And then how did he describe Trump, which I thought was great? He says, and now you got this outsider. That's what he called him. Now you got this outsider who comes along and is talking about personhood and the person in the womb. And he thinks Donald Trump, and you go watch the interview. It's a very good interview. Everybody should actually watch it. Where he says Donald Trump is gonna do something dramatic.
And also, just to give you some insight, if you haven't listened to our interview with Father Imperato, he had an abortion. He became a priest at 48. He aborted twins. This is a man that lived in the world. He knows what he's talking about.
Right.
You see, this is the choices we make. What is the most important thing in your life? You see, your choices define it. It's not your words. I told somebody this a long time ago. It's the fruit of your actions that define who you are. Look at the fruit. You know, I've known a lot. My family, we're not fancy people. No one in my family is. But I have looked at the fruit of my family. They've lived good lives and they've died with dignity. That's all I want.
Mm-hmm.
That is All the rest of it doesn't mean a damn thing.
But what you just said is true. And one of the reasons why we're here at the front line with Joe and Joe is because we need to promote that truth, because the lies of the world and the devil and those things we tell ourselves say, well, that's not enough. Am I not supposed to be free? Shouldn't I be able to explore my sexuality? Okay, in the meantime, you're being used. You don't even know, especially you young women out there. You're being used and discarded while you're listening to the feminists encourage you to get involved in the hookup culture. Okay, the homosexuals, you're all being used by your puppet masters. They're convincing you that you're living such a liberated lifestyle. In the meantime, we've covered it on this show that the destruction in the non-transgender, or excuse me, the non-heterosexual so-called LGBT movement and those who live that lifestyle is demonstrably destructive. When you look at the cases of depression, of isolation,
Do you know the
of
lifespan,
suicide.
The lifespan of a person who lives a gay lifestyle is 20 years less than a heterosexual.
20 years.
20 years.
Somebody explain to me why being
Is it
against
because
that
I'm
lifestyle.
against them?
Right.
That's
Well,
the case?
No. In
No.
fact, since we
It's
had that conversation,
20 years.
I heard somebody say that. I
It's
forgot.
the truth.
I forgot. No. I've heard somebody say that one of the reasons why they kill themselves or have a higher rate of suicide is because of the guilt and the shame that the Catholic Church places on them.
Also,
I've actually heard that.
Transgender people have a 20 times higher rate of suicide than a person that is not a transgender. And we're going to promote this in society. You see, why aren't we listening to our heart? You see, people don't want to make waves. They don't want to be hated. They don't want people to say things about them.
Right.
Sorry,
Can't do that.
No.
And
No.
I was telling. Go ahead.
That's just, and again, back to Joe Biden. No, sir, you are not a practicing Catholic. And I'm not saying it. The church is saying it. And it doesn't matter what Cardinal Dolan said. It doesn't matter what this one said. The deposit of faith says differently.
That's right.
You see, all you are in life is what God thinks of you. You all could love me. I'll tell you what, you could all hate me. And then 10 years from now, you could love me. What if we become famous, Joe and I? I doubt it's going to happen. Now all of a sudden, everyone loves me. Oh, Joe, I don't care. I don't care. I don't care if you like me or you're not. I'm going to tell you the truth. You see, all that matters is what God thinks of you. That's it.
And if you tell the truth, you're
That's
doing what
it.
God wants.
Because you're going to die, and so am I. Whether you're rich and you're listening to this, or you're eating ramen noodles 3 times a day, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter what I say, and it's not my church. It's God's church,
Right.
And we are to listen to Him. And if you don't, that's your business.
But you have to accept the consequences. That's always the thing. Remember, the church doesn't impose anything on you. Okay, the church proposes for faith and morals. You could either accept it because God gives you free will, which the church cannot take away. You have free will, and you could either accept or you could reject. If you reject, then don't blame everybody else when you suffer the destructive consequences of your actions. I will always say, Joe and I actually read an article the other day, reminded me of you. I went one time. Okay, I wish I would have gone more, but Joe used to go down to with the missionaries of charity who do nothing other than, and this is in New York City, who do nothing other than take care of patients who are usually dying from AIDS, usually because they're either lived aggressively homosexual lifestyles, drug addicted, or both. Okay, where, as Joe and I have asked the question before of the whole Stonewall gang and everybody else, where are you when your friends are withering away from AIDS? Where are you to comfort them? Where are you, in other words, when they're dying? Where is that big, bad, fascist, evil, repressive, oppressive, authoritarian Catholic Church comforting these sick people and offering them absolution for their sins before they die and giving them the death with dignity that Joe was just talking about? Again, where are you?
And it's funny because there's a number of people from my high school that's on this show right now. I have gotten into many arguments on Facebook with people. And I can remember with one gentleman, I said to them, you know, I've always been against same-sex marriage, and I've argued it vehemently. And I said to somebody once, what have you ever done for someone who was gay? I have gone, before I got married, every Saturday for 7 years, not 7 days, 7 years, people dying of AIDS in New York City. What have you ever done for someone who was gay? Nothing.
Oh, I agree with your marriage.
So
that's what they'll say.
Who cares?
Right. Well, no, that's what we would say.
So my whole point is this: you don't even know what's good for somebody. And I got news for you: when they're dying, they're not waving their flags and marching in the street. They weigh 80 pounds.
They're worried about their eternal soul, is what they are.
I'll tell you a story. This is the God's honest truth. There was a gentleman in the house that I volunteered with. This is true. He always used to cause trouble, and sometimes he would be asked to leave. It was Good Friday, and he was in St. Vincent's Hospital in Lower Manhattan. He was gay. He snuck out of St. Vincent's Hospital and went back to the house that the sisters were taking care of him. The superior found him in the bed. She held him in his arms, and he died on Good Friday. That's the truth.
And that's the church.
That's the church.
And that's love.
Not some nonsense that I'm going to basically pat you on the back and say your behavior is okay when it's not, and you know it, and so do you.
Well, maybe follow up on that point, because that's something that we need to hammer home. We've said it before. We'll say it again. We'll probably say it a million more times. If your dear friend is sitting on the edge of a cliff threatening to jump off, you do not say to him when he says, it'll make me feel better. It's what I really want to do. It's who I am. I'm meant to fly, even though you can't fly. And you say to him, you can't fly. It's impossible. You can't do it. I love you. Come back from the cliff. Don't do that, okay? The person who prevents him from doing that by telling him the truth of his situation, which is if he jumps off that cliff, he will die on the rocks below. That person who's admonishing that friend loves that friend. The person who comes along and calls him their friend, his friend, and says, just do whatever you want, man. If it makes you happy, dude, you're free. You could do whatever you want. And encourages him to jump off that cliff, that is an act of pure hatred. Because you didn't care enough about your friend to tell him if he jumped off that cliff, he was going to die. That's the difference between telling the truth and lying to people. Lying does not mean you love somebody. Lying to yourself, okay, and convincing yourself that these stupid arguments, okay, are actually truthful. That's not doing anybody any favors. It's not helping that guy at the edge of the cliff. It's not helping the guy that Joe was talking about who's dying of AIDS. It's not helping these people by promoting this. It's not. Telling the truth is the act of love that we all start doing. And also, if it
doesn't affect you or your family and you just shut your door and be like, oh, tough for them and good for me, you're not living like a Christian. We have to get out there. We have to make the world a better place. And there's a cost to that. There's a cost to that. In plain English, at the end of the day, are you willing to pay that price? It comes down to that. What's the most important thing in your life? Comes down to that. You could say anything you want. Say anything you want. God doesn't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. Doesn't care.
Yeah.
Joe Biden has made his choice. Joe Biden has made his choice. If everyone in the world supports him on it and God doesn't, he made a wrong one.
Made a wrong one.
There it is. And it's not because I'm against it, because I got news for you. I'm no better than anybody else. I'm just trying to listen and do my best. And I fail a lot. And I'm not perfect. But I'll tell you what, when I do fail, I always say I'm sorry. I go to confession every Saturday. Every Saturday, I go to confession. Have for years, because I'm a sinner. I'm a sinner. We're going to go to the great state of New Jersey.
Do we have to?
Sadly.
Well, let's remind everybody that they're at the front line with Joe and Joe. It's been a pretty heavy conversation tonight, but that's fine because heavy conversations need to be had. They need to be had often. We need to question false idols. We need to question those who bow their knee at these false idols, whether it's Joe Biden on the left, whether it's your libertarian / conservatives on the right. All right, everybody's trying to get you to bend the knee to something other than the only one you're supposed to bend the knee to, which is Jesus Christ himself, as St. Paul said. It is at his name that under his name that every knee shall bend. All right, but they try to set up all these false gods. Okay, and the right and left, they don't care about your eternal soul. They don't care about anything. As Tom mentioned earlier, it's all about money. You know what the new, before we get into the next topic, you know what the new prevailing, it seems to be, what would you call it? The ethos of this country is now. Okay, let's put aside all these other issues. Let's come to an agreement on the abortion. All right, let's have unity on abortion, on gay marriage, on gender ideology. Let's come together and put them aside so we could do what? So we could get back to making money. That's truly what it comes down to. And that's truly sad. While you're at the front line with Joe and Joe on Sunday nights at 8 o'clock, Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello in the breach, way into the breach. And for whatever reason, Joe wants us to go to New Jersey.
We're going to talk about...
Now, this is a good one because this is a story that feeds into what we're talking about. But then there's a little bit of a hopeful sign. All right. So this is, you're going to get the bad news first. And then we're going to give you the good news, all right? So we do have some good news here at the front line. We just ought to mention that once in a while. So stick with us.
A high school social studies teacher in Somerset, New Jersey, who helped run his school's Gay-Straight Alliance and had advocated for introducing students to cartoon pornography in class, was arrested and charged for sending a male student sexually explicit images of himself. The school is Watchung Hills Regional High School. The teacher's name is Sean DiGiovanna. Also, the underage victim reported that Mr. DiGiovanna sent him text messages soliciting a sexual relationship. So I guess my only question to Joe Pasillo is this. Why is a teacher in a public school running a club for gay-straight alliances? I want my teachers who get paid with my taxpayer money to teach, and that's it. You want to be an activist? Do it on your own time.
Yeah.
Like this. I don't do this in work. I work in a bank. I don't talk about this because I work in a bank. I do this at home. If you want to be an activist, do it on your own time.
That's right.
By the way, he makes $86,000 a year and you pay for it.
And by the way, you know who's a good example of that? Just to depart from your story for just 1 second, but it's a good example of what you're talking about. Remember the controversy with Colin Kaepernick, okay? And the argument, at least here at the front line, was, well, it's a workplace, and you're not allowed to do what you want at the workplace. And we said we would have respected him more if he would have gone outside of work and maybe organized some other football players if he wanted to go and march against police brutality or whatever he wants to protest against. I would have respected him more. You know who's a good example of that is Ben Watson, tight end for the New England Patriots. Well, he was with the Saints. Now he's with the Patriots. Okay. With the Patriots.
Phenomenal human being.
Ben Watson is fully pro-life. Fully, okay, pro-life. Okay. When you watch him on the football field and any other time in his professional capacity as a tight end, okay, you never hear him say anything or talk about anything other than football, because that's what he does in the workplace. We respect Ben Watson, not because we do agree with him on his pro-life position, but we respect the fact that he doesn't bring it into the workplace. He actually gets out there in the public and shows some real nerve and guts, all right, without trying to get to people without having a built-in audience of 5 million people in front of him. My point in bringing him up is that takes a lot of guts to do it his way. I think he did it correctly. Now, there's a great line in the movie Annie Hall, okay, where Woody Allen says to Diane Keaton, he says, "Those who can't do teach, and those who can't teach Jim." Okay, Mr. Sean DiGiovanna, those who can't do teach, and those who can't teach head the Gay-Straight Alliance at Watchung Hills High School. It means nothing, sir. And on top of it, what it does seem to mean, at least to us, is a very disordered individual like yourself had access to some underage people that you should not have had access to. Okay? And did he suffer any consequences?
Well, he got arrested. He's probably going to go to prison.
Well, he should go to prison.
Absolutely.
He should go to prison. Okay? In other words, he promotes this in the kids, and then he solicits them for sex. Could you imagine this? Now, this is the dark side of the story. All right? Talking about Mr. DiGiovanna, who will hopefully he will get justice for his actions. But there's somebody else involved here.
Yes.
On a more positive note, I will say, to preface it, Annie's a paisan. All right, so go ahead, Joe.
The mayor of Barnegat Township is holding firm against his negative reactions to his forceful denunciation of a state law mandating LGBT history to be taught in public schools. Remember, our Governor Phil Murphy recently made that a law.
Yeah.
The mayor's name is Alfonso Cerulli.
Alfonso Cerulli.
Yes.
Isn't it Alfonso? Alfonso.
Yes.
The O means something at the end of it. Alfonso Cerulli.
This is what Mr. Cerulli said. I think it's important to hear it. He says, the LGBT agenda is an affront to Almighty God. Now is the time for righteous people to stand up for their rights. He went on, the government has no right to teach our kids morality. We have crossed the line into absurdity.
That's right. It's absurd.
I would agree.
It's absurd.
It is absurd.
It's absurd and it's insane.
It's absurd that a 14-year-old girl has to change in front of an 18-year-old guy in a high school.
Right.
It's absurd that transgender, men read stories to children. It's absurd.
Did you see that clip? Did you see that? If any of you saw this clip online, there's a picture going around online. If this doesn't tell you all you need to see, and when people warn about, oh, you're all just being so paranoid, this guy dressed up as a woman goes to this drag queen hour in a library. Okay, and there's a shot of with the book, and he's got his legs wide open and his crotch is showing, and you see all the little kids in front of him.
What is wrong with their
insane?
This is absurd. It's absurd to teach 3-year-olds in preschool about gay sex or sex, period. It's absurd.
Right.
And you don't have to be a religious person to feel that way. It's simply absurd.
And I want to make a point about what our paisan Mayor Cerulli said. You see how Mayor Alfonso Cerulli spoke? Okay, when we started this conversation today about conservatives who set up false idols, you have the left setting up false idols. Mayor Cerulli said this is an affront to Almighty God. That's why he's opposed to this. Not because, he didn't come up with some political reason. He didn't come up with. He said it's an affront to Almighty God. See, Mayor Cerulli puts God first. And these actions on the part of the state and Governor Murphy, it makes my stomach turn when I call him governor. Governor Murphy, these actions are an affront to Almighty God. You see, the only one you worship is God. So Mayor Cerulli mentions God. That's why I tied it in with our first segment, because the left has their idols. They never mention God. The right has their idols, and they never put God first. That's our problem in this country. Don't you get it? Even the conservative people will say, well, I'm an atheist conservative. Then go to the Democrats, because I really don't care if I happen to agree with you on this, that, or the other thing. If you're not putting God first, then all you are is an ideologue. That means that means the only solutions you're going to listen to are the solutions that are going to comport with your ideological worldview. But you're not putting God first, because if you put God first, then you could find the truth of every issue, the truth of every situation, okay, without marching in that ideological lockstep that both the left and the right do, which, well, again, I will repeat for the 5th time in this episode of the Frontline with Joe and Joe. That's what we have to be distrustful of on the conservative side of the political spectrum, because many of their goals, Joe, are the same. Many of those same people would have no problem with Governor Murphy's LGBT agenda. They would have no problem with it. Maybe they would say, but each school district should decide for themselves. No, see, Mayor Cerulli put it right. All of this, I don't care if you do it in your school district, in this school district now, all of this is an affront to Almighty God. That's why he's one of my heroes now.
Even if you don't believe in God, common sense tells you this is insane. It's simply insane. 20 years ago, you would be arrested
for this stuff.
If a principal told an 11-year-old that it's okay and encouraged that child to transition from a boy to a girl, he would be arrested. 20 short years ago. We've evolved.
Right.
We're so progressive.
We've grown, Joe.
We're so far from where we've come.
Right.
Bull.
Right. And you know the funny thing
Cerulli
is,
has stones. Can you
right.
say that?
Yeah, you can say that.
He has stones.
Right.
And he'll be persecuted for it.
Right.
Are you willing to stand up and have people hate you? Are you willing to basically be pushed aside? You see, this is what Cerulli did. He didn't put his job or his title above what was right.
Right.
You see, it comes down, you see, this is where the rubber meets the road, guys, in life. You know, a lot of people make this statement, that statement, this statement. The rubber meets the road when you do stuff like this.
That's right.
And this is what this guy did. This is also what he said. He said, I'm not a bigot. I love people. This is going to hurt people. And I'm worried about the kids. You're taking young kids and you're telling them, if you want to be a girl, you can be a girl. If you want to be a guy, you can be a guy. We're giving them identity crises.
Right.
He's right.
He's absolutely right.
You see, he has a PhD in common sense, Cerulli.
We do too.
He has a PhD. I'm going to say it again. It's simple common sense. You could be a Jew. You could be a Muslim. You could be a Catholic. You could be whatever. A Protestant. Doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
It's common sense.
And you mentioned it takes nerve, you know, for Cerulli to do what he did, but also down in his neck of the woods, something we reported on about a month ago that really didn't get a lot of play in the media, was the Orthodox Jewish community, who were subsequently joined by a group of Catholics and Protestants who were protesting this non-heterosexual so-called LGBT nonsense being promoted in the public schools. And what happened? Show you about guts. These are Orthodox Jews, to whom all your secular Jews didn't bother to defend too much. Let's point that out too. Okay, they were vandalized. There was what, 100 acts? There was 100 acts of after they held this protest down in Lakewood. Okay, the neighborhood, the area where that is predominantly occupied by Orthodox Jews, was vandalized. They had over 100 incidents of vandalism. So you think it's just losing your job or suffering some, oh, you can't come to my cocktail party. No, these people vandalized. Were vandalized by the peace-loving LGBT group. Okay, I did want to mention one thing. Do we have time?
I just want to cover one more show, but yeah, go for it. One more segment.
Well, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, basically, you know, because we kind of went off the path, but that's okay, because I think everything we talked about is very important.
Let's give a quick shout out. Sean Michael just joined us. Hey, Sean Michael, what's happening? Welcome back to the show, brother.
We're going to go to Chicago. This was interesting, I thought. Trump spoke at the International Association of Police Chiefs in Chicago. Guess who didn't show up? The chief of police of Chicago. His name is Eddie Johnson.
Talk about disrespect.
This was Trump's comment to Mr. Johnson, because you know he's not going to let him get away with that one. He basically says, here's a man that could not bother showing up for a meeting of police chiefs in his hometown. And with the President of the United States, no less. And you know why? It's because he's not doing his job. Let me give you a few stats. Last year, 565 people were murdered in Chicago. Since Eddie Johnson has been police chief, more than 1,500 people have been murdered in Chicago, and 13,067 have been shot.
13,000 people getting shot. You imagine that?
Now, Chicago has some of the toughest gun laws in the country, and Trump brought that out too. Basically, what he said is, despite the city's emphasis on gun control, violence continues. So as the Donald could only say, he basically said, doesn't seem to be working too well, does it? We have stressed this time and time again. Guns don't kill people. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, there's always been guns in this country.
Lots and lots of guns.
What's going on did not take place. You ever ask yourself that question? Why? Why? Why is that the case? There were just as many guns 30 years ago. I graduated high school in 1988. There was never, ever shootings like there are. Now it's almost like every other day. It's not even news anymore.
Right.
Why? We have lost our way. We have a broken society. We have wounded children because the family has become fractured. Also, mental illness is a result of some of that family dysfunctionality.
Well, you can't treat them either. I mean, you can't set up hospitals that treat the sick, because they were all emptied out in the 1970s thanks to Geraldo Rivera. And others, they wanted to deinstitutionalize it. So like every time you come up with a common sense solution, but what do you say? What have we been saying? If you look at this generation, okay, if you look at most of the people that are perpetrating these crimes, they're in this generation, they are devoid of any sense of morality, which means that basically they are the victims of this godless, or the promotion, I should say, of this godless society that we live in, through Hollywood, through music, through video games, all the things that people used to be fearful of saying, oh, that's going to put you on the conservative Christian right because you're against video games. These video games are disgusting. I want to tell you that right now. I played Pong. I was one of the first players of Pong. Okay, I remember that was the first video game, Atari's Pong. Okay, these video games are disgusting. Okay, I'm not gonna shy away from the fact that in my life, between the ages of probably 20 and 40 years old, I didn't live an exemplary life. Certainly not a life you could call Catholic. Okay, so I get the whole idea of pornography and sexual liberation and everything else. I found out the hard way it's a dead end. Okay, but it was promoted to me. I'm not a victim. I made my choices, but it was promoted to me. Okay, where now my eyes are open. I'm just using myself as an example, Joe Arsenello. But my point is, all of this is promoted to these kids, and on top of it, the violence. Okay, all the violence and everything else. It's all promoted to them, and then when they pick up a gun and they go into a school and they shoot people, you want to blame the gun. And sometimes I want to say, don't even blame the kid. Blame yourselves. You created him. This is the Frankenstein that you created. Okay, you took God out of him through your social engineering, all right, indoctrination, political, cultural indoctrination. You created this Frankenstein, and now you can't control him. Now he goes into a school and shoots 20 of his classmates, and you want to blame the NRA and everybody else who owns a gun in this country. Now, I'm not going to defend the NRA, all right, but what I will say is this: do us all a favor. Don't insult us. Blame yourself first. You chased God away. We're welcoming him back. Us and the people that watch us and others out there are welcoming God back into our culture. And we're fighting against you to open the door for him, because right now you're barricading the door. And we will get you out of the way, all right? And God will come back into this culture. But while all of the disastrous consequences of your worldview we see on the news every day, don't sit there and blame us.
Oh, please.
Blame yourself.
And also, this is going to be a little bit of, it's basic common sense, but we are all free. But consequences are not free. They're imposed upon us, obviously. This is a consequence. This is the bad fruit of bad choices of our society. People don't know what's right and wrong anymore. You see, God gives us direction. When you have direction, when you have a mother and a father who love you and who are focused on you, you don't do crap like this.
No.
You just don't.
No.
I mean, I'm not saying you're going to be perfect, because I'm sure as hell not. But I'm going to tell you this. You don't go shooting people.
Well, no, Joe, let's be clear.
You don't go hurting people.
We said this the other day on the radio show, okay? In other words, nobody's looking to create the Garden of Eden here on earth, okay? You're not going to get heaven on earth. Church doesn't say you can. We don't say you can. No priest tells you can. You're never going to have heaven on earth. As Joe said earlier, the goal is heaven after you die. But as far as how we can get through this life, if we think that we're going to get through this life in a disordered way, what I mean by that is a way that's not ordered towards the natural law and the moral law, God's law, who keeps you on that narrow path that leads to him. And ultimately, let's face it, makes you happy in life.
Absolutely.
Because if there's one thing that I think even the pornography promoters and the drug promoters and all of them out there, I think they always promote pleasure, right? They always promote immediate gratification. But one thing they never even pretend that they can provide for you is peace. You see, you could suffer in life. When your life is ordered towards God, you know what you could do through that suffering? You know what you will have? You will have peace, because you know that it means something. Your pain and suffering means something. Your times of prosperity means something, okay? But underneath it all, you have a peace that cannot be offered by any of these things. It cannot. And peace is the one thing that.
Oh, and that's
yeah, I'm talking
absolutely
about true peace that is aligned with the truth, which is Christ. Okay. When you live your life that way, okay, and again, they can tell me they can tell me whatever they want because I lived the life that they told me that I should live. Okay. It led me onto my mother's couch at 37 years old. Okay. Without a driver's license for 2.5 years, without a job for 2.5 years. Okay. Suffering the consequences that Joe's talking about. My life's an open book. I don't care. I rebuilt my life the day I went back to church. I prayed a rosary and I went to confession. That's when my life began to be rebuilt. After I took everything I was given and threw it in the garbage. Okay. I came back to God and my life has been completely ordered since then. All right. Again, we're all sinners.
Oh, we
fall. Okay. But my life has been ordered since then. Okay. And the things that they tried to promote. Okay. These are the things we're talking about. I could never ever dream of living that way. And underneath it all is, just to put a finer point on it, that peace of knowing that I'm doing my best to do what it is that God wants me to do. That's the society that we need in this country.
For people who are listening to us, you see, God doesn't take anything from you. He only gives you things. You see, it doesn't look good though. Meaning, no one's going to put you on the cover of People magazine. You're not necessarily going to have the nicest car. You're not necessarily going to have the nicest house. But you will have peace. You will have a peaceful home. There will be love in your house. And you will have a good life. And you will die with dignity, because a lot of people don't.
Unfortunately.
And this is the truth. You see, people aren't convinced of that yet in their head. I learned that at 22. I learned that young. I said, Joseph, your way doesn't work. Doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
That is a wonderful revelation to come to. I can't make you come to it, actually. You got to figure that out for yourself. Some people never do, sadly. What I will say is this. Don't listen to what people say. Watch what they do and look at the fruit of their life. And then ask yourself the question, am I different from them? Why can't I have that too? Because you can. And it's free. Mm. I can remember one time, again, talking with the missionaries of charity. I was in the West Village where I got married, actually on Christopher Street. That's where they had their hospice for men who had AIDS. And there was a church, and there was one nun praying in the church in front of the Blessed Sacrament. The door was open, and it was during the day. And everyone's passing by. And I kind of just was looking at this situation, and I said to myself, there's the answer right in there. One person is in there. Everyone just walking by. You know, if you're Catholic, you're one confession away. One confession away from peace. Why don't you try it? Are you afraid? One confession, a 15-minute conversation, a sincere act of, I am sorry, and I'll do my very best to not do that again. Your life will change. You'll feel like a burden is lifted off of you, and it's not psychological. You will feel different. Mm. Every time I walk out of a confessional, I feel different. I feel better. Mm-hmm. It brings me joy. And it's not psychological. No. We did an interview, you could listen to it on our page, with a man who was in prison for attempted murder. He was in state prison, Cochrane State Prison, in the worst part of it, in the lockdown. I actually saw a special on that on MSNBC. It's one of the most violent prisons in America. His name's Wayne Schroeder. You could find that on our page. He spent 15 years in prison, 4 years in solitary confinement in Cochrane. He gave his life to Jesus Christ. He's now a Catholic. He said when he went to confession, this is a man that did bad things, my friends.
Pretty bad things.
He said he felt like a bucket of water was poured upon him. That's not psychological.
No.
When you have something, it's like if someone tells you, Joe, if I'm hungry, and you say, you're not hungry, you're like, yes, I am. How do you know that? When someone takes a burden from you, And only that can be taken from you. Time doesn't change anything. Doesn't change anything. Wounds fester and linger. God came on this earth for that. He came to forgive sins. He came for sinners, and I am one of them. Do you have the guts to say you're sorry? Are you so sure of yourself that you're so confident that what you do is right? I know I'm wrong. I know I'm wrong. There's everything about me that's wrong, and everything about God is right. Why don't you give it a chance? That's all. That's all I have to say.
Well, that's a great way to end this show. Is the need to we started out this show talking about the need to evangelize the culture, and if there's one thing that we all need to do is acknowledge that this country is on the wrong path. And some of us are in the fight. Many of you who are watching, one of the reasons why you're watching is because you want to know more about these things. You want to know how to get in the fight. Joe and I say the same thing all the time. Before you can fight this fight, you got to clean up your own house. We know as Catholics the best way to do that, the only way to do that, is get to confession. Give Christ your sins, receive him in the Eucharist, and then pray your rosary and get at the front line. Because we're dealing with liars, we're dealing with destructive people, we are dealing with people that will destroy your life in this world and in the next. Okay? Make no mistake about it. This fight is for your immortal soul. This isn't a fight to make America better. This is just the way the evil manifests itself in the world, and that's why we're confronting it on this show. And that's why we're going to keep talking about these things. And I want to say this right now. I'll remember for next week. Rather than do a quick hit segment next week, we're going to start the show next week. We're going to spend about 10 minutes in the beginning of the show. I want to get into the argument. One of the things that Joe and I are doing, we are exploding myths and lies, all right, that are promoted. And one of the biggest ones that's promoted, that we were going to get into it tonight, we're going a little bit overtime, so we're going to start next week on it, is the idea Joe Biden said, I'm a practicing Catholic. I have no right to impose my religious views on others. That is a lie. Think about that. Get your questions ready, because in the first 10 minutes of next week's show, we're going to blow that whole argument right out of the water. An argument we've been hearing now for 40 years, all right? We're going to blow that right out of the water. And we're going to arm our brothers and sisters with the truth of how to confront that argument. Would you agree?
I love it.
I love it. Thanks for joining the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello, 8 o'clock Sunday night on Facebook Live. We have some new friends who joined us tonight. We have some friends that came on that were watching us or listening to us over on the Crusade channel from Friday's show, where we were graciously invited by Mike Church and Rick Barrett to be guest hosts on the Barrett Brief. And you could hear that on our page, all right, on the Front Line with Joe and Joe on Facebook. We have the link to that, to the audio. They provided it as a free download to their listeners, which we were honored that they did that. So we had an exhausting 3-hour conversation on the radio on the Crusade channel, talking about a lot of the same things. Mike Church, Rick Barrett, they're all talking about the same things. They're at the front line down there in the South. So we want to thank you all for joining us. We want to thank Joe Campo over in Brooklyn. Most importantly, we want to thank Jonathan Ross up in Toronto, Canada, who produces our show. He's currently, so you know, if you're interested in Frontline with Joe and Joe coffee mugs, if you're interested in a Frontline with Joe and Joe t-shirt, I just ordered my wife a black Frontline with Joe and Joe hoodie. Then go on Holy Faith Media on YouTube, and on there you will see a link to where you can buy Joe and Joe, let's call it swag.
And we don't get a dime.
And we don't get a dime.
Not a dime.
We don't get a dime. Jonathan helps us. So, and if he can make a couple bucks and help to promote the show, then we're happy for him. And again, we want to thank you all. And Trish recently joined. She joined at the end. Trish, go back and watch the show. We're going to post it in about 5 minutes, and then you can watch the whole show. But in the meantime, God bless you all. Keep joining us at our conversation here at the front line, because our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation, well, that's going on everywhere. See you next week.
Peace.